Hello, all. Welcome to another episode of MFP Live. I'm Donna Ladd, the founding editor of the Mississippi Free Press, and my co-host is Kimberly Griffin, the founding publisher of the Mississippi Free Press. Hey, Kimberly. And we have a wonderful, special, empowered guest tonight, Shameka Reed. And Shameka is, she's originally from Macomb, she was telling me, but she's been in Jackson for a long time. She can tell y'all a little bit more about that. But she's also the founder of the Young, Gifted, and Empowered Awards. Welcome, Shameka.
Hi, how are you guys doing?
We're good. So
That's good.
Wonderful to have you.
Thank you. Thank you guys so much for having me.
So I am super excited to have you. She is one of my favorite people. We don't spend enough time together.
We don't.
But we actually have been able to spend a little bit more time together since restrictions and things have been lifted. I, in full disclosure, am a derelict, young, gifted, and empowered board member.
Committee member.
Yeah, committee member.
Yes.
So I know your story because we've talked about, growing up in Macomb and all that good stuff. Tell us a little bit about where you grew up, how you got to Jackson, and why you decided to create the awards, Young, Gifted, and Empowered Awards.
Okay, so I'm going to give this disclaimer. I tell people I grew up in Macomb because that's just the easiest thing to say. I actually grew up in
Did you grow up out from Macomb? Is that
I
what we
did.
said?
Yes, I grew up in a rural community called Progress, which is actually still about 30 minutes outside of Macomb. And you actually pass through like two other small little towns to get to it. However, we still had a Macomb zip code, even though you drove through Magnolia and Osaka to get to Progress. I don't know how that worked. It's beyond me. But I grew up there, very rural community, very family-oriented community. My grandmother stayed across the street from me with my mom, my dad, and my sister. His sister lived next door to us, and one lived across the street from us. And then another sister lived literally down the road from us. So we were and his brother lived down the street from us, across the street from us. So it is, thank you for pulling up that map.
And can I just tell you something real quick, Shameka? Todd and I were just in Progress recently. Yeah, I don't want to give up all the secrets here, but let's just say we might escape to the woods of Pike County every now and then to get away from everything. I know I never thought I'd say that before the pandemic, but we were just exploring Progress. So I just wanted you to know that.
Okay, did you go to the little library that's like about 900 square feet?
No, but we should.
Oh, okay. Yeah,
we'll be back down there at some point. So we'll definitely do that. It's a cute little place. It is. Yes. Anyway, I'm tickled about that. I look at Todd. He's like, I know. We've been all over Pike County lately. I just explored.
Okay. Yeah, because I know that street that he was on. Okay, so yeah, it's very rare that I tell people this story that I'm from, a little town called Progress, and they actually say, "Oh, I've been there," and can actually pull it up on a map. So that's, you guys are already like some of my most favorite people now. So yeah, very family oriented. Oh, Ty, please do not show this. I know exactly. This is like down the street from my house. I know exactly where that is.
I do too.
Yeah, okay. So
as of a month ago.
Stay right there. If you go straight down this street, I'm pointing like they can see. Yeah, go down that street. Yep, you're headed towards my house. Yep, Magnolia.
We did that.
Yeah.
Oh, how fun!
And let me say this: I absolutely love going home. I do. We have horses, we have cows, and it's just so relaxing. My dad passed at the beginning of the year. And so, we're kind of spending time now. It has definitely a more sentimental value to us to be there. And it's definitely been interesting going there now without him being there, because we would get on the 4-wheeler and we would go feed the cows, and I'm talking about like in the last few years that, you know, I grew up like that, but
Mm-hmm.
it's just something very peaceful about it.
Mm-hmm.
You know, we would go fishing, you know, go to a pond and go fishing and things like that. And those are kind of things that I did growing up. So when I go home, I'm not really interested in staying in the house. I want to be outside. I want to be on the swing, you know, out by the cows doing it. So I'm really a country girl at heart.
Mm-hmm.
I love it. Like I said, family, very close-knit family. Went to South Pike, graduated from South Pike High School, and came to Jackson State University, and made Jackson my home after that. You know, kind of thought about whether or not I wanted to leave, if I wanted to stay in Mississippi, and decided to stay. Had some opportunities come up, and just kind of also wanted to stay closer to my family. And after graduating from Jackson State, started working a few jobs here. Started, you know, very first job was at Jackson State, and still, you know, work at Jackson State at full time. And so, you know, it's just been an amazing experience. And I think you asked me, why did I start Young, Gifted, and Empowered? And I started Young, Gifted, and Empowered to help with the narrative of how, you know, Blacks are portrayed in the media, the stories that are being told about African Americans in the media, and especially particularly about the perception of Blacks in Mississippi and why we stay. I get to travel a lot and, you know, just have some really interesting conversations about Mississippi. And it's always interesting how people view us. And I always have to tell them at the end, you know, come and see my Mississippi. Let me show you my Mississippi. Let me help you let me help you change your perspective. And so for me, creating Young, Gifted, and Empowered was one of my ways of doing that. I often tell the story about where I was the night that I found out that George Zimmerman was being, you know, acquitted of his charges or found not guilty. And I was in Washington, D.C. with some friends, and we were headed out. And I heard this, and it just changed the whole mood for that night. And I just remember how everything went with that trial, and how Trayvon was painted, how they tried to portray him, how his friends, how, you know, the young lady that, you know, was on the phone with him, how she was portrayed in the media. And I was just like, gosh, that's, you know, he's a victim, but yet and still the media is villainizing him. And I, you know, and I was just like, we have to change, you know, we have to, what's my role in this? How do I help? You know, and I always say that everyone has a role to play. I may not be the one that gets out and organizes a march or anything like that, but what can I do? What skills do I have? What skill sets do I have that I can lend to the movement and help tell these stories? So that's my long, drawn out answer.
No, you said something there that I have encountered. I encountered it less than I used to. Probably because I kind of travel in a group of Southern, the people I travel with are typically Southern, so I hear it less. When you say you would talk to people about Mississippi and they would tell you a narrative that you knew was not true, what are some of the things you heard when traveling? Because you travel internationally frequently, you travel nationally frequently.
Yeah. I think I'll give you a more recent situation just here in the United States, in Houston, a few hours away, 6 hours away. I was visiting a friend and we went to a house gathering. And they were just like, oh, where are you from? I was like, oh, from Jackson, you know, Mississippi. And it was just like, yeah, I'm never coming to Mississippi. And I said, why not? And it was like, wow, you know, the lynchings and the racism. Right. And, you know, I was like, okay. I said, well, you know, every place has a history. Right. And while I'm not saying that, you know, racism does not exist, I said, but I'll say this, I've never been called the N-word to my face. I've never experienced that. I said, our racism that we experience a lot in Mississippi now is more systemic. And I said, but we could look at Houston. I mean, we could look at Texas. and, you know, talk about some of the laws that you guys have passed. That's systemic racism. You know, so it was like, well, you know, I've heard, you know, about the lynchings and things like that. I said, I have not heard of recent lynchings. You know, and I said, let me give you an example. I said, and I hate to use this, but I had to. I said, when you hear about unarmed Black men being killed by police officers, where have you ever heard about that happening in Mississippi? And it was just like, no. And so I said, you know, so we started talking. I started telling them about how progressive the young people that are still here, that have made a commitment to Mississippi, how progressive they're being, have been. And I started sharing them, you know, even with talking with them about different celebrities that are from Mississippi and how some of them still live here and still have an impact here. And so, it is interesting to see. It is very interesting to experience at times, and even sometimes just living in Mississippi, when you have people that come in from another state. I think sometimes, you know, they come in with a savior mentality, like we're coming to save the people.
Wait, that'll preach. Stay right there.
Yeah, I mean, you know, I've seen it. I've been, you know, I've heard people say, yeah, I would offer such and such a job, but it's Mississippi. I don't think they will come. Well, you're here. You're here. Tell me about your experience that's been here. You know, tell me about your experience here in Mississippi. So it's been really, some of those conversations have been really interesting.
There's a couple of layers to that. One of the things I think is that we're probably dealing with the third generation of the Great Migration.
Okay.
And they don't necessarily come to where they were in the summers, or, you know, for example, if you're in Chicago, you're less likely to come home as much. Or if you're in California, you're less likely to go back to Texas. So there's some removal, and there's a story and oftentimes an accurate story, but a story that doesn't tell the full picture. One of the things I always tell people is Paul Robeson almost got lynched in Peekskill, New York, but you wouldn't say you're not going to New York again. Mm-hmm. And that nationally, we have a history of race violence. It is not limited to the South. And so it's interesting to watch people go, really? It's like, look it up. It's not a secret. And not just Black people, Latinx people in California. It is, you know, Asian people all over the United States. That's more editorializing. I'm gonna kick it over to Donna because she.
Well, so many things to say here, but I was actually turning around because I have a book back here somewhere called Red Summer, and if people want to understand the level of race violence and race massacres around the country, which is really robbed from our history, you know, just Google Red Summer and look at, in just 1919, the massacres and the, you know, with white mobs and all of these things that happened just that summer, not to mention much of the 20th century. So, you know, I'm a history nerd, so I'm always sticking those things in there. And then you mentioned Texas. Oh, come on. I mean, Texas, you know, what they did to Black veterans, you know, and I mean, so many, you know, people, the point being here, thank you, because that's on my shelf behind me. But the point being here is that people don't know their own history, right? And they do. And I like to say that people love to scapegoat Mississippi, right? And if there's anything Mississippians agree on, no matter what else we disagree on, is we get real sick of that when they won't pay attention to what's going on back home.
Yes.
Right?
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's what you're saying there, you know, just this narrative change of it's not all the stereotype. So, you know, I guess talk more about that. I mean, it's like this idea, brain drain, right? Everybody's all of a sudden, we perennially talk about brain drain and we don't do nearly enough about it. That's my view on it. But what do you see from your perspective, Shameka, as the, what do you think are the real causes of young people leaving Mississippi?
Opportunities. So
Yep.
a few years ago, I was working on this grant and at Jackson State, and we were trying to write this grant to help, I guess, of course, to help the students that we were working with. And what we learned, and it was kind of workforce development, but what we learned was that Mississippi is a manufacturing state. And they offer manufacturing kinds of jobs. And so if you have a group of students that are coming out with a degree in accounting, we've gotten a little bit better about accounting now. We have some firms here, but it's so limited for them. So a lot of the students, when they graduate, they're not interested in working in factories. They're not interested in, starting off as a line worker at Nissan, and there's nothing wrong with that. But they're not interested in starting there and having to work their way up, if that is even a possibility for them. So that was the biggest thing that we saw, was opportunities to get a job that, that they really wanted to work, instead of having to work a job that they had to work. And so, I just saw recently a story where a young lady graduated from college at Jackson State, and I think she's, I forget where she's going, but fresh out of college, she's making six figures. And that's, not likely to happen here. For a lot of students. And, a lot of young people have a perception of what they want their lifestyle to be, what they want their life to be like. And then you just, there's things that happen. I saw a lot of young adults that, with this recent Supreme Court, passing of, revoking the marijuana laws that we voted for. 74% of the state, voted to have medicinal marijuana. And now that's been overturned. So I saw a lot of young people say, like, really? One, it kind of made them feel like their vote didn't count. And then two, it's just like, it makes no sense. Like, really, this is medicinal. We're not even talking about recreational marijuana. We're talking about things that could help people that are hurting, so that are sick, that are depressed, that, live in pain. So so I know that was very frustrating for a lot of our young adults. And so when you start seeing things like that, I think that's the reason a lot of them leave.
Yeah. And so what are the solutions?
So, I'll say this. One of the things that one of the reasons I stayed was because if everyone continued to leave, then how do we make it better? So that was one of the reasons I stayed. But you can't expect everyone to commit to that. And nor should, you can't fault them for that. But that was definitely one of the major reasons that I stayed, because if we all left, then we, there wouldn't, how would we make it better? And then also, I think we need to really start playing up our opportunities more in Mississippi. Mississippi is a great place to start a business. If you want to do something very unique and different, I think this is fertile soil for that. I think, there's excellent opportunities for that. and the overhead and the cost to start a business and live in Mississippi are amazing. I'll give you this story. I was in Thailand with a group of people. We were all there for a site visit. And so we were all sitting out by the pool. It had been a long day. So we were all sitting out by the pool and we were just talking about where we were from. And so there was a guy from California and he was like, gosh, Mississippi, same kind of narrative. I just don't know if I could do it. I was like, really? He was like, no, so then we started talking about home ownership. And this guy, I would think he would be getting closer to retirement. And he talked about how him and his wife were saving to buy a house in California. And so I was like, okay. And I said, wow. And I said, in Jackson, I said, $300,000 probably get you a 2,000 square foot home, blah, 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 gave him all the, stats on it. He was like, no, absolutely not. I was like, no, seriously. He was like, no, you couldn't get that kind of house for 300,000. So I said, okay. Right. I pulled up, I went to Trula, but Zillow, whoever, and I went there and I put in houses from $300,000 to $500,000 and pulled up the houses and showed him. And he was like, oh my God. He said, the money that my wife and I have saved right now, we could buy a house outright in Mississippi and we're still saving in California. Mm-hmm. It's like, yeah. But, he was like, but it's Mississippi, so I'm not coming. I was like, okay, well, different quality of life, but, to each his own.
And they don't get that the community here is that we have these remarkable communities. Now, we fully understand that there are parts, there are some problems in Mississippi, but honestly, there really are problems everywhere. Mm-hmm. And I'll say this, and I'll kick it to Kimberly because I know she'll have so much more to say and more brilliant. But for me, it's like, I don't know, living here, you can honestly kind of make a difference every day if you choose to. And because there's so many people trying to make a difference and not assuming that everything's okay around them, to go back to the ignorance that we talk about in other places about their own racism and their own history. And so it's very special here. And what I find, and I bet you do too, is that people will come visit and then kind of be jealous about it because they kind of see what kind of, how that can be and how our communities can be. Once you're inside these wonderful bubbles, and the bubbles have gotten bigger is the good news over the years, but that's my editorial on that.
So you talk about something I've noticed. You talk about being from Macomb, or as we say in Mississippi, out from Macomb.
Yeah.
I've noticed there are some centers of Black excellence in the state, and those are obviously Mount Bayou, Macomb, Yazoo City, Clarksdale. Macomb and Magnolia are two ones that I noticed in my peer group. There was one I was thinking about. I think that was, Canton, out from Canton. What do you think happens in those places to nurture folks?
There are a couple of things that happen. And they're oxymorons because it's funny. One is you're always going to get, that's all right, baby. Just keep trying. Or you're either going to get, no, baby, that's not what you're supposed to. No, that's not for you. You need to try something else. So you're going to get that honesty. That honesty, I think, helps develop you and, and toughen up your skin a little bit so you can, not be afraid to try some things, to try and fail and understand that failure is not final. It's just a part of the process. And so, to me, that's where it happens, that the support that you get, I tell people that my family made me feel like I could do anything. They may not have always understood it,
right.
My dad, for the longest, could not tell you what I did for a living. He called me Tummy from Martin because he said I didn't have no job. And but you know, he was proud. He was proud of whatever he thought I was doing, whatever he told people I was doing for a living. He was proud of that, and and that's been. I think that's the support you get from a small community. Everybody has a part in kind of raising you. And those communities that you named are very small rural communities. So everybody knows everybody. Everybody has a hand in helping to rear you, to help make you better. And I hate that some of these small communities, some of them absolutely had a job.
Like Shameka, he absolutely had a job.
What did he do, Kim?
Our producer's having fun right now.
Yeah. What did he do, Kim? Where did he work? Where did he go every day, Kim?
He
exactly.
went to
that building.
the place where he worked.
Yeah.
Where Tommy worked. You know.
Yeah. That's kind of how, that's how my dad was about me. So, and let me say this is and I don't want to take away from all of the good things that I've said about Mississippi, but also now if you look at these small communities like Progress and Yazoo City and Kenton, there has been a shift there. Mm-hmm. Even in Pike County, we have seen an uptick in crime. Mm-hmm. And I think that may be because that community element isn't there anymore. Mm-hmm. And so, we produce excellence. I think it was produced because people cared and it was a community effort in helping you get to that next level in life. No one had any other intentions other than to see you do well. And that's the kind of community we came from.
Well, you say that, and I told you that Todd and I have spent a little bit of time in Pike County lately. And we've been doing these. People hear me talk about it all the time, but one of the things we decided to get out of the house during the pandemic. We happen to have a convertible, which makes it fun. But we've been trying to go to every county in the state, and we've been just road tripping, and we've probably over half at this point. But the thing that strikes us about so many of our counties and our towns and cities, most of them are towns, right? Is just the level of decay and crumbling aspects of a lot of the historic buildings, and so the thing that I think we've been seeing county after county in Mississippi is the effects of disinvestment somehow. Mm-hmm. You know what I'm saying? It's like, and I think living in Jackson, you can almost kind of, if you don't get out more, you can almost assume that that some of the decay and the dilapidation that we're facing in some of our neighborhoods, for instance, is a kind of an urban thing. But I think what we're seeing is that, our state's in trouble in many ways, and I, I'm not trying to have a political conversation, but that the reinvestment is not happening in the way it needs to happen. And I'm not blaming that certainly not blaming that on communities that you come from. I blame it more on communities I would come from probably, but I don't know. I don't know what my question is in that, but Macomb was one of the cities that struck me as that it's sad to see quite the level of decay. And I don't mean in the communities. I mean the city, the town itself. All the buildings boarded up, but it's not just Macomb. But I just wonder what your thoughts are about that, like why that's happened and what we need to be doing to think about helping our towns more.
So I've had the same kind of feeling, I'm gonna be honest, driving through Jackson lately. Mm-hmm. Recently, I had to visit some elementary schools to drop off some information, and there were schools that I'd never been to before because, simply I don't have children, so they mm-hmm. don't have anyone in a school, and I didn't grow up here, mm-hmm. and I've been amazed mm-hmm. At what I've seen. And so I wish I had an answer to that, Donna. I really do, because even just being in these last couple of weeks, getting up at 8 a.m. to go to these schools in various parts of Jackson and seeing, like the school, an elementary school for a child, and then right next door seeing a house that is completely fallen in, that is overgrown, and not just one community, a lot of communities that, that these schools, that these elementary schools are located in. And I wish I had an answer for that. I have not been able to travel as much as you and Todd have. And I'll be honest, when I go home to Pike County, when I go home to Magnolia, I'm strictly going to our farm, and to see the horses and the cows. And that's strictly what I'm doing. And I don't have an answer for that. I wish I did. I wish there was something that we could do. I don't know if our communities are not receiving enough money to maintain and and develop. I don't have the answer for that.
Well, and I don't expect you to, this is a difficult question, but it's something I'm thinking about. So you're from Macomb, and we were or from Pike County, and we were and so we're really talking about it there, because, and then you kind of, when you're doing these road trips, you kind of, we go all over the place. And so we'll go into the quote unquote suburbs, but they're not really suburbs. They're rural areas where wealthy people have moved and taken so much money with them. And so I guess what I'm saying is that we often think of white flight for a city like Jackson and cities, but it really kind of happens everywhere in many ways. And it's just, I don't know. I guess maybe I'm just wanting to say out loud to people to start thinking about our state falling apart. And instead of maybe always investing in a completely new piece of land so far away from everybody else, and start, it's like, let's keep our cities going, our towns, our communities. Anyway, you just brought all that to the surface for me.
Well, one of the things about that too is, how easy is it to do that in a city? Is the city easy to do business with?
Right.
Is it easy to buy a property within that city and begin to use it for whatever vision you have for it? So it's interesting.
Yeah.
Well, it's interesting to watch, particularly as one of the things that I get frustrated with is the new and shiny factor. There's this idea, if the Walmart moves in, then we've made it, or whatever the thing is. And what that does is it pulls, you saw those boarded up stores where the community gathered and chatted and went about, and Shameka's going to college. And we pulled all of, one of the things that happens, I think, is we think of that as progress. We think of that new, shiny, everything looking alike as some sort of progress. And what we know is when those big box stores and manufacturing are your primary employers, it leads to that kind of drain, because you don't have any incentive to create a public education system that supports a higher level of education. So if you're a manufacturing company, a manufacturing state, you're creating people to be in manufacturing plants. You're not creating people to be CPAs or to be engineers or to be, you're creating some engineers for the manufacturing plants, but then the rest of them have to go somewhere and work. And so it's interesting to watch people. I do think that Jackson and Hattiesburg, and I'm sure there are others. One of the things that is, I don't know if beneficial, you talked about it's easy to start a business. I think one of the things in many of those cities that seem to be doing a little bit better, we still have all kinds of problems, but is that I had years and years ago, I had someone, chain restaurant, district manager, tell me that Jackson was the worst place besides Austin he'd ever seen for chains in his entire life, and he would never put another restaurant here. I sort of like that. Now, restaurants shouldn't be your only. I was like, oh, okay, well, good.
Right.
Restaurants shouldn't be your only industry, but it's indicative of what we have been told to value and cherish.
Mm-hmm.
And what we have been told to value and cherish in this state, in a lot of ways, is what's new. Mm-hmm. What's new, what's shiny, what's big, what's farther away from those people. How do you get away from those people, whoever those people are?
Mm-hmm.
And so you get away from those people by moving away and building a box where you can go buy your toilet paper and your books in the same place. I don't want to do that. That's my rant.
You don't want to buy your toilet paper and books in the same place, Kimberly?
I try not to. No, I would like to buy my books in the bookstore.
Yeah.
I would like to buy my household products in the household product store. I don't want that to be. I also don't want to take it 5 hours for me to navigate whatever that is.
Oh, that big old box. Oh my God. You're exhausted by the time you leave.
Right. And you're mad. And you're irritated.
Oh, I cuss. Yeah. Todd won't walk in a Walmart now. So, I mean, there's.
I don't blame him.
So, anyway, that's my rant.
I don't blame him on that.
That's my rant.
We have the editorial voice from the other room.
It's so true.
We were so happy to get that. I remember when that Walmart was built, because it was over in the mall at first. You literally, when I was growing up in Macomb, you could literally walk out of the mall and walk directly into Walmart. So It's now where the Hobby Lobby is, but and so I remember when all of that came. I remember when the mall was built. Keep going, keep going, Todd. Right over there. Yeah,
that's our producer.
Yep, right there. That's where the Walmart used to be, and it was. You would walk out of the mall and go. Your mom would let you go in the mall while she went grocery shopping in Walmart. So.
But then our malls move. I mean, that's what gets me. It's like, if I'm not completely anti a mall, but what I hate, and Walmart has certainly been guilty of this. It's like they people flee and go build a new mall somewhere further out, and it just kind of keeps going and going, and it just kills me. A rant, but it's like when we drive in the suburbs around here to see all the money. We were driving home last weekend from, we went to Columbus, Mississippi on the road trip. And by the way, we saw the bulldozer taking the base apart from the Confederate statue that had been in front of the courthouse. So we were tickled about that. He'll probably throw that up at the screen. But anyway, but my point is that we're driving back in on 25, and all the money that has gone further and further out to build businesses and such out there, when there's so much sitting right here in Jackson that could be invested in if people just would live together. I mean, that's the most, I don't know. I
think that's the problem. I think we fixed part of the problem. The problem is that people are going to want to live around people that don't look, think, act, do the same thing they do on Sunday morning, Saturday morning, whenever you go do your faith worship. You've got to we want to live around people that are mirrors of ourselves.
Yeah.
And so when other people arrive, then we just go farther away from those other people.
Yeah.
And so if you keep doing that, then the other people leave, you leave. Anyway, that's
where, by the way, where the Confederate statue was in front of the Lowndes County Courthouse, just so y'all know. We watched him. Anyway, this is a side note, but sorry, Shameka. But yeah. Okay. So where do we go from there, Kimberly? I want to talk about
Oh, well,
young people, but you go ahead with
yes.
what you have
No,
first.
you talk about some people, young
The
people.
young people. Well,
Yeah.
so I know this is fun though. This is a good one.
I'm enjoying it.
So the young, empowered,
Young, gifted, and empowered.
Gifted, empowered. So, I mean, you and all of us share so many of these beliefs, but really kind of at the heart of what we're trying to do at the Mississippi Free Press, and as you probably are aware that we've tried to do for a long time at the Jackson Free Press, is narrative change. And you mentioned that. It's like we have to change these narratives. And I had started the Youth Media Project that we plan to bring back under the Mississippi Free Press at some point when that, past pandemic. But it's all about that. It's all about both young people seeing the possibility for themselves, learning to tell their own stories, learning these skills, but then trying to get that story out to the larger audience so they don't stereotype, particularly our young people of color. And so I want you to just talk more about that. What needs to happen to help our young people, in Mississippi?
So I was on a call today with Sabrina Wright from the Mississippi Museum, the Greater Jackson Arts Council. And she was like, I have some great news. I was like, okay. And she was telling me that some of the students that are going to be participating in JPS's summer camp this summer, because the Young Gifted and Empowered Awards, let me backtrack a little bit. We have an art exhibit because one of the things I got convicted of was that we had this great event once a year. And for the month of February, we were telling these stories, leading up to the event. And at the event, you got to see see and hear the stories and hear from the honorees. And then after that, that was it. So a couple of things happened. 2 years ago, we started doing the Young Gifted and Empowered Youth Summit. And we partnered with the early college program at Tougaloo. It was a part of Jackson Public Schools District and Tougaloo College. So we would go over there and we would bring some of the past honorees to participate in the youth summit, and they would continue to share their stories with youth. And of course, all of our honorees are African American, and most of the students in JPS, a majority of them are African American. So they got to see people that looked like them, that came from similar backgrounds as them, get to see how they got to, that circumstances or whatever it may be didn't hold them back, and they still, achieved a level of excellence and produced a level of excellence. And then I decided I wanted to do an art exhibit because we had all of these videos, we have all of this footage and, photographs and things. And so, like I said, I was sharing that today. I got a great phone call to find out that students that are participating in JPS's summer camp are going to get to see our art exhibit and come over and experience it. But they'll get to experience it virtually right now, but because we have a virtual production of that art exhibit. And so just continuously putting those stories out there, continuously allowing young people to see people that they can touch and feel and talk to and say, okay, wait a minute, I know, I've met Dr. Rotimi Badero, who's the world's only cardiologist and nephrologist. And, he came to my classroom to speak, or I got to watch a video about him. So for me, it's, continuously pushing that narrative, continually putting that information out.
Kimberly, did you want in, or do you want me to?
Yeah, I think that's so important. I am routinely disappointed in the idea that has that continues to take root in the African American community, that it's a better place if the people that teach and lead the place don't look like me. And so it's interesting to watch that happen, and then for people to wonder why their kids walk into their first job lacking confidence, or because they've never really had the opportunity to to see the leadership. Like you tell kids they can be whatever they want to be, but if everywhere they go, the people that lead the thing are people that don't look like them, then you don't believe that as their parent or the person that's in charge of taking care of them. So I applaud you for doing that. And if anybody's watching, comment below anyone else that Shameka needs to know about. I'm saying this as a derelict committee member.
Yes, it's getting close to time again, Kim. You'll be getting an email soon saying selection committee, it's time to get together, so we can.
I mean, it's important to put people in the same space with folks, because most of my friends became a doctor or a lawyer because that's who they knew. They may have, I mean, these aren't bad careers. If they had known some engineers, they may have become an engineer. They just didn't know any. They became teachers, lawyers, and doctors, and a few accountants, couple accountants thrown in there. But that's all that went to our church. So that's how they knew how to navigate that world. So I'm gonna toss it back to Donna, because there I was editorializing again.
Well, I think what I would add to that, and then I will form this into a question for Shameka, I promise. But there was a study, and I think it was either the University of Chicago or the University of Illinois. Anyway, I think Chicago some years ago, but there was a study that was a really good study that actually showed that a lot of the success of young people from particular neighborhoods and communities correlated with the number of professionals who look like them who remained in the community. And it makes sense because of what y'all are talking about, because young people see, and interact with other people, like when I was doing the youth media project, I'm a white woman, obviously, and like the whitest, but the young people in the youth media project, are the people that they are connecting with constantly, and they are calling in for interviews and all these other things and are taking them very seriously, were for the most part Black professionals who were really impressed by them. And it kind of became this circular thing. So for, I guess what I would say is just, I want to hear anything you want to say on that, Shameka, but I'm curious, it's almost like wraps up everything we're talking about here about communities and people moving around and such. It's like, if you took Jackson, for instance, how do you get, how do we as a community, what are the things you'd like to see us do solution-wise to help not just keep people from leaving Mississippi, but to connect more of our young people with the kinds of role models that they need, which I know you're doing through your awards, but how do we do that more day to day?
So there are some organizations and individuals that are doing that day to day. I think providing them with more support. Like I said in the beginning, we all have a role to play. So you may not be able to, or I may not be able to go and do what they're doing every day, pick up kids from a school and bring them to the after school program. But, little things begin to add up. What can I give? Okay, maybe I can donate some money, or maybe I can, do something, give something that will help them in their efforts. And I think sometimes figuring out who's already doing the work and being a resource to who's already doing the work. It's interesting that you said that. We were having this conversation, my good friend Michael Lewis and I, we were having this conversation today, and we were just talking about there's not enough connection of the older generation and the younger generation. That there's so much knowledge, especially, and let me say it this way, especially within the older generation of Black people that have made a lot of money. There's not and I'm just being very frank, there's not a lot of connection there. So there's a lot of intellect, there's a lot of knowledge that is being lost because there's not a connection. But, you know, making sure that we become a resource to each other. Mm-hmm. Supporting those efforts that are out, in my opinion, supporting those efforts that are already in place and helping make them better.
But it's interesting. But I'm going to critique the Black community, EGADs, Black elders everywhere. They don't talk about money. You don't know people are rich till they are long dead. And you get in there and you go, what? How much money do we have?
That is true. And, but you know, Kim, I think that's a generational thing. I think that's let me not say generational. I think that's a community. I think that's a Black community thing, because that's the one thing we do not talk about. Like, we don't talk about. We just let you assume either we got it or we don't have it, and we don't share that information.
And so I think one of the things I would add on top of that is they need to tell us how they kept the money, because we don't know. Like,
are we asking?
They need to explain it. I didn't know. There's some stuff I didn't know that the folks were dead. I would ask more questions. You know what I'm saying? Like, how would I have known to ask where the stock was? I didn't know we had stock. So I'm gonna say, so that's true. We should say, Medea, I know you don't want to talk about this, but we need to. You know, where is do you have a will? And I think there also needs to be some financial literacy on top of that for us, because it's a different world. There's Bitcoin, there's things we don't know. Anyway, that was a tangent and an amendment to what you were talking about.
But I'll say this as well, even beyond the family structure, even just within the general community,
right.
One of the things we were talking about today is, I'm just gonna say it, like, you know, blacks with new money are not talking to the Blacks with old money and saying, hey, how did you maintain that money? How did you invest it in the community to help make the community better?
Right.
How did you grow your money? We're not having that conversation. We're not. And I think that goes back to also just saying, you know, it's kind of like, that's one thing, talking about money is taboo in our community. You just, like I said, you assume people either have it or they don't. But you know, you don't really talk about it.
Well, you know, one thing that pops into my head on this is, one of the things Kimberly and I have talked a lot about as we've started the Mississippi Free Press, is that it's this whole issue of fairly small groups of people with money control a lot of things in the state. And there are certain philanthropists that everybody goes to for certain things. And even back when we were doing the Chick Ball, and we were kind of trying at the Jackson Free Press, and we were trying to design it in such a way where young people know that they can give. Like and that was it. That's been in studies too, that when young people are asked to give whatever they can give, not just necessarily money, but to help other people, then that helps them, kind of thing. So I think what I'm saying here is that, and I'm learning from y'all, but, you know, there is kind of a need, I think, in our state for us to have these kind of conversations about re-envisioning philanthropy, maybe, right? If we're going to support programs and we're going to have some kind of safety net for our kids, so that, you know, one of my frustrations is that I could invite a young people who's severely at risk, who did a great job into the, and I don't love at risk, but who was literally in a really tough situation where he'd already got in trouble. I'm thinking of one particular young person. He comes in to the project, he does a great job, and then there's nothing for him to go into next. That's like that next thing. So one of the things I'm saying is that we need these systems of safety nets, but we don't seem to have these good conversations about how to pay for them. Y'all know what I mean? And how we could intelligently, people could get together and say, we really want to do something about violence in Jackson, for instance. how do we prevent young people from getting into that cycle in the first place? And what does all that look like? So I don't know. That's just what y'all talking about. That made me think, that maybe we all don't talk about what we could do with resources together enough sometimes. I don't know. It's just I'm positing that. But what do you think of that, Shameka?
I agree. I think like I said, I think there's so many great organizations out there that are doing the work, but they're bootstrapping it.
That's right.
And there's only so much you can do bootstrapping, you can start out like that, but you don't want to continue like that. Then it becomes, it makes the work that you're doing more tedious and more, harder. It makes it make you wonder if it's all worth it, because it's so hard. I always say sometimes it doesn't have to be easy, just possible. But sometimes I want it to be easy because I'm tired of it being hard.
Right here.
So can you make it easy and possible? Because
right.
Doing it the hard way every time just wears on you. So getting these resources, helping these organizations find the resources that they need,
right.
and letting them know about where they can go to get those resources. It's just some of it sometimes just comes down to education and not knowing.
Well,
I
and
think that's it.
Collaborations. Go ahead, Kimberly. Go ahead.
I think this also comes down to something that happens to women, that happens to black and brown folks, is we encounter the world as if it's gonna be hard. Like, we don't question the hardness sometimes. Like, we don't look around and say, well, gee, that organization is doing exactly the same thing, and they seem to be operating at a moderately stressful level, where I am, Donna and I literally are in the closet doing a tornado trying to finish a grant.
We did a few weeks ago.
Right, twice.
Yeah. I think we got one of them, but yeah.
Right. So there's this idea that has been created that doesn't serve us, to not ask those questions, because we assume this is the way we're supposed to be. It's supposed to be hard. It's always hard. It's always been hard. Everything we do is hard. We don't even know what it's like for something to be just fine. Just get up and it's just fine.
There's no struggle. It's just, ta-da, here it is, everything I need.
Yeah, right. Well, is your awards, is that nonprofit?
It is. We received a 501c3 2 years ago, and
Good.
So yes.
Well, talk about how people can support it.
Well, you can support us by going to our website and watching some of our videos. You can make a donation on our website. Again, we are 501c3, so it is tax deductible. You can also send us emails to let us know about young people or young professionals. We highlight young professionals between the ages of 25 and 45 who are leaders in innovation, philanthropy, leadership, education, entrepreneurship. So if you know of some individuals that may fit that criteria, send us, nominate an honoree, send us an email and let us know. And we look for individuals from across the state. We are not just a Jackson Award. We highlight individuals from across the state. I felt like this year, 2020, which is not on the website, I felt like 2020 was the Mississippi Delta Awards, because we highlighted our Artist of the Year was Kingfish, who's from Clarksdale, I think. Yeah, and then we had another doctor, oh gosh, let me say his name correctly, because a slip of the tongue and you can get another word. Day. Yeah. So he was in Cleveland. I'm trying to think of who the other. I was reading that message from Dr. Kimberly Smash. So it felt like the Delta Awards this year, and but I was glad to see that we had so many people represented from the Mississippi Delta. So it is a statewide award. So we are looking for we are looking for potential applicants from all over the state. It is an application process. You know, Kimberly, I hate to tell who some of the committee members are that read these applications, but she's one of them, and we do go and we vote on the applications. We vet them. We do background checks to make sure that they are who they say they are. They're doing what they say they do. So.
Well, this has been an amazing conversation, and I don't know about y'all, but I had a really good time. So
I had a great time.
Thank you so much for doing this. And speaking of nonprofits, the Mississippi Free Press is also a statewide nonprofit, and we are kind of in what we're calling our Spring Truth to Power campaign right now, because we report a whole lot of truth to power, and we're in a match at the moment that I have to tell y'all about. It's former Supreme Court Justice Fred Banks and Justice Reuben Anderson are matching y'all up to $2,000. And so anything you can give of any amount at mfp.ms/donate is going to help us keep growing this kind of reporting around the state. And so we appreciate every dime that y'all have given. We're growing rapidly. And our goal is to grow our reporting, and Kimberly is Ms. Revenue over there. So she is the one who is the brilliant one on that front. So thank you, Kimberly. And then next week on MFP Live, not next week, we're taking off next week. But then the week after that, on June 10th at 7 to 8 p.m., a special time, 7 to 8 p.m., the fabulous writer Kiese is going to be here with us, and he only needs a first name. So, and as he told us when we were setting it up, he said, we can talk about anything you want. So y'all, we don't know what's going to happen on June 10th. Buckle up from 7 to 8 p.m. on June 10th. You guys join us for the next MFP Live, and it's been wonderful. Thank you so much, Shameka.
Thank you guys for having me.
Fabulous work, and just let's go do this thing. Let's change the narrative about Mississippi. And thank you, Kimberly, as always. We'll see y'all in 2 weeks.